Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Maker That Money podcast, the podcast where we talk about turning your hobby into your jobby. I am Pooch of Repkord. With me, as always, my trusty partner in crime, Mr. Andrew Mayhall of 3D Gloop. Mr. Gloop, how are you today?
Doing great. How are you?
I am fantastic, man. I'm geared up. We're in season 2. We just created an arbitrary season break point for the second season of content. I think it seemed like a reasonable. We have our summer break, right? We're like a
Yep.
school. We take a school break and then we
Mhm.
come back in. But
Yes.
seemed like a good place to delineate a little break.
Mhm.
Welcome. If you're joining us in the chat, we stream this podcast live with exciting visuals, as evidenced here every what is it, Friday? Every Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific. Yeah.
Don't even know what day it is
Spoken
anymore, eh?
spoken like a true entrepreneur, right? Like, don't even know what day it is. Didn't even realize it was a 3D holiday weekend last weekend. We got all the great things going on because every day is work day when
Yes.
you do what we do, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
A couple shout outs to some familiar faces in the chat. We got Courtney of Filament Stories. Good to see you. Alex Gibson from across the pond. My friend, always a pleasure. Ms. Pez Liz, the queen, the everything of MakerDeck, or one of them, but the driving force. Good to see you. And some new faces. Maybe. Oh, look at this. Fotis is in
Yes.
the house. I'm really
There we
glad
go.
you're here, Fotis, because we honestly, if I was a little bit more organized, I would have said, hey, hop on because this is your jam, right? Talking about this
Mhm.
stuff. So today on the pod, we're going to talk about the new maker economy and specifically some of the new websites and places and marketplaces where designers and creators and anybody with good ideas can basically post and share designs and get paid for that.
Mhm.
I think we both have limited experience, like in terms of sponsoring other people. I'm kind of dabbling in the printables club stuff, just trying to see what kind of additional value and I can unlock with some of our design stuff, and I can see where the addiction of doing it lies, because it's just so out there, it's so raw. You have an idea in your head, you model it up, you put it out there, and then people want to support they like it enough that they pay their hard earned. So I've talked about this before in product world. That's one of the rewarding dopamine
Mhm.
hits of being an entrepreneur, when you get validation from taking an idea, bringing it to market.
Mhm.
And this is like an even faster way in a lot of times, right? It's more raw way.
Yep.
You might not be able to unlock as much margin. We're gonna get into that. Because you're just kind of putting the idea and putting all the work of like the creation out there. So in the
Yep.
world of things like 3D printing, that's relatively easy, in the sense that you can just send it to your printer and have it made. It's not quite as complicated as like if you were to share like woodworking plans for
Mhm.
making some larger project where there's fewer people that are going to have the equipment and want to put in the time and all that stuff. So in a lot of ways, the tool has unlocked the marketplace in a different way, which is really cool. But we will get to that, right? Where that's the terrible teaser that I just put up there. Before we do that, we got to do our housekeeping. So, if you're new to the podcast, we do this, like I said, every Friday. You can interact with us on the chat on YouTube. We're also a call-in show. There's a link above where if you want to call in and chat with us that way, you're certainly welcome to do that. We always love hearing your nice voices. Please like and subscribe. We're on all the major podcast platforms after the fact. So hopefully we want to meet you wherever you prefer to consume your content. I'm sure there's more stuff I'm forgetting, but that's it. For the calls to action, let's do our wins for the week. But before we do wins for the week, I want to take a quick little poll of people in the chat, and you as well, my friend
Okay.
here, Andrew. How many people, show of hands, made their bed this morning? Who made their bed this morning?
I did.
Is that something you regularly do?
It hasn't been, but I've been trying to do better at doing that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So there's somebody in the chat, or maybe Andrew, correct me. I don't remember who the author is. I want to say it's an ex-military guy, but he had like a very wrote a book around the whole thing about being organized and setting your trend, setting your state for the day. Right, make your bed. Start by making your bed, so you've achieved something right out of bed. Right, like as soon as you get up. I've always liked the way that sounds, and I'm like you, where it's like I would say 90% of the time at this point, like I get up and I make my bed. I mean, it's fairly. I'm not a toss and turn and sleeper, so it's just like great. Pull the sheets over, tighten everything up. It takes less than a minute. But I'm curious if that resonates with you people out there in Chatland in terms of like, does it make you feel like you've achieved something? Like, is this just something that we say and it sounds good? I don't know. I feel good. At least the room looks nice when I leave it.
I mean, I don't know. For me, I always was like, I'm just gonna get back into it later and just ruin it. So for the longest time, it's just like it doesn't matter.
It's a terrible argument, though. By that measure, like, why bother brushing your teeth either? Because you're just gonna eat again later. I mean, there's like some personal organizational hygiene. I think that's probably worth doing. And I see the merits of both ways, right? Like usually you're in your room like when you're sleep. I don't spend a lot of time in my bedroom really, so it's like, who is this for? I make the bed and then I don't go back in there until I get back in bed later at night. So it does seem particularly ridiculous. I mean, generally speaking. Yes, thank you, David Tobin. It was Admiral McRaven's it was a commencement speech. Thank you. That's what the thing was. So there we go. Nope, Winslow didn't make his bed. Win was late. That's 20 push-ups for you, Winslow. Let's go. We'll wait for being late. Andrew Sink, good to see him. He says he makes his bed every morning. It's so weird to think that there's people that don't. I mean, routine is interesting that way, right? I don't know. I think there's value in good organizational routine. I don't know. Try it. Like I think that's the point. It's so easy to do if it's just a small change, if it's an achievable change. What are the other like things in your life, whether it's personal or work life, that you could probably stand to just like have a better routine, better habits around?
Oh man,
I know we've talked about like the finances. Like you're very big at making sure you look at the bank account every day and just have a good finger on the pulse of what's happening there. I historically have not been great at that because I derive a lot of anxiety sometimes from just like what's where I feel like I should be or the state of our cash or whatever. And so I know that it's not healthy and it's not great to avoid those things, but your point is well taken. It's good practice.
Yeah.
Let's see. Fotis says make his bed or shave. Nope, never again. Not doing either. Well, to be fair, Fotis, your beard is like the bed for your face, and so you gotta at least keep that tidy, I would hope. All right. Shall we let's talk about some wins for the week. So if you're new to the podcast, we are a positive duo here. We like to focus on the good things that are happening in life.
All of the good vibes.
And we're all good vibes all the time. 100% of the time we're super positive. Never ever negative or down. Lies. So many lies. So if you're in the chat, share something good that happened either in your work life, your business life, your personal life. And Andrew's going to regale us with a tale of positivity right now from his world. Go.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see. We just got in some new dies for our thermoforming, vacuum forming.
Ooh,
Um, yeah, we dropped a pretty penny on some professionally made thermoforming dies so that we can increase production capacity of our retail packaging. So
love that.
yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's amazing the things that we like geek out on in terms of like what just like it seems so trivial or just not even paid attention to by the general public, like the packaging, right? Like
Hmm.
that is a very rewarding personal aspect of your business oftentimes to get a
Hmm.
more professional, you know, appearance. It's like our, you know, making our
Oh
products
yeah,
well dressed.
exactly.
So that's awesome, man. That's great.
It I mean, yeah, these things are, it's a simple little change. We went from, cut MDF forms to, CNC'd aluminum forms, but that's the thing that
Aluminium. Yeah.
gets the cycle time down. So, it's really about, pushing it to the next level of increasing capacity. So, yeah, lots of cool things in the pipeline.
That's awesome. I'm gonna take for my win. So my good friend Josh Manley, and Jake, who I know through him over at CAD class. They just dropped an amazingly good book on Fusion 360. If you're
Hmm.
trying to learn CAD and you're into the Fusion ecosystem, highly recommend. And they of course supplement with an incredible amount of online content as well. And they're doing some really epic shorts content as well, which is great. But they just gave me a copy of their book, and I have been very much enjoying like spending time just learning proper technique for create. So I'm self-taught with so many things in my life. And I think maybe this is relatable
A
to
lot of
a lot of you
makers are
guys,
like
right?
that.
Like we kind of learn enough to be dangerous, but a lot of times we just like skip over a lot of fundamentals. And man, am I realizing that I skipped over a lot of like fundamentals. I'm like I've been designing in Fusion for like the better part of 2 something years, and like I just skipped over. It's like learning to speak a language and never knowing how to write sometimes, you know? Like you don't know how to write the language, but you can communicate. So you can be
Mhm,
effective. But man,
mhm,
can you be way more effective when you have like some fundamental understanding of it. And so it's interesting
mhm.
kind of going backwards now and going through that. And so this is a really tough thing, and something I'm curious what your guys' feedback is when we're when time is so precious and we're operating with limited amounts of it. You know, we don't always have the time to like take an in-depth course on something, right? Like
Mhm.
we try to get just enough to like get what we need done, but then we've talked about this in the past. We take on, I guess, some degree of technical debt around
Yep,
the fact that because
exactly
we
what
never
this is.
really learned it, we don't even
Mhm,
realize how inefficient we're being until
mhm.
we go back and actually maybe commit to learning it properly. So, what's something in your life, chat, that you feel like you might have skipped over and you went back and you're like, man, I should have invested the time to learn that properly, like the amount of hours that I would have saved, you know.
Mhm.
And in the world of CAD modeling and stuff like that, the amount of like extra clicking and you know, all this stuff, I mean, that adds up.
It
um
does.
I remember talking to like an electrician that was wiring one of my old houses and stuff, and he was saying he used to work for another electrician when he was doing his apprenticeship, who was neurotic about like minimizing the amount of movement. You know, he would tell each of his employees, like, you know, the time is money. And that when you look at the aggregate amount of hours that we
Mhm,
spend over years and stuff like that, and you're like zipping from, you know, this room to this room, you don't like have a plan to what you're doing, you haven't
uh-huh.
mapped it out. Like,
Yep.
we're spending a lot more time than we
Yeah.
need to be. And
Yeah.
when they flat bid something, like that's your margin, right, for a service
Mhm.
industry like that. So as an employee, that sucks to have somebody standing over you and like, why
Well,
did you
yeah,
go from here to
it's
there
like
to
you're
there to
being
there to there?
micromanaged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that I can understand the point that when there's no plan, there's no efficiency to the whole thing, like that technical debt that adds up
Mhm,
substantially over the years. It's interesting.
mhm.
Anything like that in your world where you feel like you've
Oh,
deferred some education perhaps at
oh,
your own peril?
absolutely. I mean, I mean, I'll go and say like I dropped out of school to go and pursue, my dream of founding a startup company
Yeah.
and, raising money and everything else. And there are a lot of things to be said for again going back and kind of committing to learning or understanding things that you don't fully know. There's this process that happens that a lot of people, especially makers, I think we get enough understanding to become confident or proficient in something that we're doing,
Hmm.
and then we never go back to rethink if there's another way to do this or if there's a better way to do it.
Sure.
And then in some cases, I see this a lot in with maker types, is that we become so confident in our abilities that
Hmm.
we're basically completely ignoring like the full understanding. We actually don't have that full understanding,
Right.
um and it's limiting.
It
So taking that time to go back and rethink a lot is crucial. I think.
I agree. I agree. And it reminds me of the distinction between something like street smarts versus book smarts, right? Where it's like you,
Hmm.
you can be very successful without having a formal education and
Sure.
anything. I've mentioned in the past I was a freelance web developer prior to this, and I was self-taught with that as well, and constantly
Hmm.
coming across stuff. Over time you start to pick up by sometimes by osmosis, by working on teams with other people, learning other people's practices, going back and actually spending time to research. It's not an efficient way to do it, but it's the trial by fire method.
Hmm.
Um, but you brought up something that reminds me of maybe the plight of a professional athlete. When somebody is good enough at something where they can play at a top tier level,
Hmm.
and then they don't drop out of school, but they don't go on to the traditional path of they go from
Hmm.
high school maybe to professional sports, and then you realize when you've come to your end of your time there, like you've missed out potentially on some
Hmm.
core stuff. Maybe. I mean, I don't know,
Yeah.
just some thoughts. So there's
Hmm.
no right or wrong way necessarily,
Yeah.
but
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, I think it's all about for us makers. In a lot of cases, we all need to take the time to rethink a lot of things that we're doing, because we are so accustomed to, maybe we only have a 3D printer or a laser cutter, and then we start using that tool for whatever it is that we think, because it can solve all of these problems. But in many cases, if we sit back, like, and just rethink, could we do this in a different way? We could do this on all aspects of our life.
yeah,
With your case, it's like, hey, I want to learn Fusion a little bit better. I want to rethink of how I'm doing things, become more efficient at it.
yeah. And
Whatever it might be.
I mean, it's so tough because time is the X factor and all of that. And at the
Hmm.
end of the day, it's like I don't have a lot of time that I can just devote to learning, even though I realize that can come back. So it's like figuring out that equation of like what is time well
Yep.
spent, right?
Hmm.
Something like that. I'm starting to see. I'm like, the payoff is if I
Yep.
put this time in now, I'm gonna get these hours back on the back end and then some.
Hmm. Yep.
So I do think stopping and identifying those times in some scenarios and just doing that exercise is valuable.
Hmm.
Let's see. Let's share some wins from the chat here. We got some good ones. Brandon Langdon said he landed a big contract for something like I scrolled too far.
Looks like titanium manufacturing.
Titanium manufacturing, man. We're just playing here in polymer land, and Brandon Landon next level, fusing the metal bits. That's fantastic. Congrats on that. Alex Gibson, big wins, fixed, upgraded all of his large format printers with improved cable chains and restored a disgusting shed fine Creality CR10 back to a new machine. Fantastic. Congrats on that. Narca 3D got Narca trademarked. So Mayhall is now Narca 3D. Congrats. I
That's
just went through a
awesome.
trademark process myself. It's something
Hmm.
nice getting that little official trademark, and there's value in having your brand registered that way. That's
Yep.
fantastic. Good. Vishal, good to see you. Man, lots of good wins. Oh, Liz, win for the week. Replacing Zombie Hedgehog with Pooch as special guest for Z and Z on Monday. Yes, that's true. I will be with Liz. I don't know that I could possibly replace Zombie Hedgehog, but I will do my best. And of course, he'd be missed. But I'll come with my best zombie / hedgehog impersonation. I
Nice.
don't. What does a hedgehog even do? Don't know.
I don't know.
Didn't ask. Don't care. All right. That was a long way around from the win, but I hope you guys in conclusion to that, I hope you guys spend a little bit of time thinking about ways that maybe you can earn some time back and investing in yourself like that. And I think education is always a good one. CAD skills is never a bad thing. I am very encouraging of my kids to do it because I think there are a lot of industries that benefit from having CAD design skills, whether you want to do what Photos does and you're a artist and it's a digital sculpting technique. If you're into gaming, if you're into architecture, if you're into product design, I mean, the application for taking files and making digital files into the 3D world. I'm not speaking very well right now. You guys get the idea. Creating 3D content for all kinds of different industry is booming, in my opinion. I think that's education well spent. I don't know. If you disagree, let me know, and you will. Tuck my shirt into my pants. How can you? I'm not wearing pants, Liz. Are you talking to me? The benefits of waist up podcasting.
Yes.
Let's talk about the maker economy. This kind of all dovetails in nicely. So we talk about building skills and ways. We talk about ways to make money as a maker.
Yeah,
on this podcast. It's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We are both product people historically. But as we well know, there are many, many, many ways as a maker to squeeze those dollars out of other, ventures in this space. You may be a content creator. There are a lot of successful content creators that we are friends with that talk about 3D printing and other forms of making and get sponsorships and go to events and build their personal brand. Which is fantastic. That's a great way to do it. Obviously designing a product, a lot of people start as a side hustle, right? So we see a lot of people starting up Etsy shops. Whatever you do, I would argue that finding something that's unique to you, that obviously you're not coming in, if you have a niche space, if you have something you're passionate about, we talk about that all of the time. That's great. These websites that I mentioned in the teaser, Colts 3D, MyMiniFactory, Printables Clubs, what other ones? Gumroad, etc. More and more Thangs, more and more popping up every day. First of all, tell me in the chat if you have one of those, maybe a Patreon. A lot of people got their start on Patreon,
a big one,
right? And I think we're seeing some new spaces pop up specifically for makers because Patreon is an all-encompassing subscribe to what I do in general. It can be anything, not specific to makers, right? It can fund the creation of music and podcasts and other things. It's an interesting space. I don't know that I would call it. It's not Kickstarter. It's not angel investing. It's, what do you call it? Monthly subscription for supporting somebody's venture.
It's just a subscription support service, basically. That's the way I look at it.
What do they call it? Anyway, let me know in the chat if you utilize something like this. So where people are paying a monthly subscription and you're offering some service, some value add, and where you are and maybe why you chose it. We as makers are I think interested because a lot of times a lot of the content that we see on social media, a lot of that we print similar models or we make similar designs and stuff, and it's an interesting way to make some money. I think, like anything, it seems maybe, I don't know. Correct me if you disagree, Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
But it reminds me of Etsy in a certain way, where it's like, oh, this is great. I'm gonna just take this. I'm gonna create a club, and the money's gonna come in, profit, boom, done, easy, right? And the realities of it is, it's gonna be a grind, like anything else, right? Like you have to
Mm-hmm.
retain your membership. You get turnover of membership.
Yep.
You have to make sure you're constantly producing so that the value is there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, until maybe you hit a critical mass of like content. I don't know that does your portfolio have enough value to stand on its own where you don't have to be adding new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine over time, as more competition and stuff comes in, if you're not adding new stuff, the same way creators have to create new content and stuff like that, you can't just rely on the back catalog. As
Yeah.
product developers, we can't necessarily always rely on the same product.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little different, because product life cycles are,
Sure. Mm-hmm.
obviously Coca-Cola has been Coca-Cola for quite some time, but over
Yeah.
time they, add on other brands, they
Well,
acquire
they're always
things. They're
adding brands or
totally.
flavors or whatever it might be. Yeah. No,
If you want to
absolutely.
grow, and that and
Mm-hmm.
that fully depends on what your goals are too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know. Why don't you start by giving me your first feels? Do you support any of these individuals? Have you thought about like
Oh
just
yeah.
putting any of your content out there? What do you
Mm-hmm.
think?
So I've been supporter of several of those friendlies, I call them, in the space that I know pretty well, on Patreon or YouTube memberships, whatever it might be. I think just recently I started looking at the printables clubs. I'm a big supporter of high quality 3D models. I mean, it, it's a good way to throw some dollars towards some awesome people that are putting their time, the most valuable thing that we all have is our time,
Yeah.
into something that it takes, it's an art. And so rewarding those or helping those people continuing to do that, is a it's a big value for me, I guess, or I guess a passion for me is to see that happen. I've never really participated in the Patreon model myself, like in the sense of, oh hey, I've got one, and like I've got designs or whatever.
Hmm.
I've maybe thought about it in the past, but it's I'm not the type who lives on social media.
Hmm.
I'm not posting all the time. I'm not, sitting there, I don't really know if I would be a good person to have, a crowd of people, that I'm being consistent at publishing,
Hmm.
content or whatever it
Hmm.
is to them.
Yeah.
But that's me personally.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to say, when Patreon first came out, I was skeptical, but skeptical is not the right word. I completely can appreciate the value that exists with this membership model, and
Hmm.
how appealing it is for a lot of people. I, coming from uh, the older ages of software, am highly resistant to just like additional monthly expenses. Like, I've always said, like, I would rather just like kind of like a one-time donation of a specific amount or whatever. Like, I
Hmm.
don't like feeling like part of the model is me not remembering to cancel my membership. The old
Hmm.
gym membership model, where it's like they're just kind of banking on
Sure.
the fact that it's uncomfortable or difficult enough to not be a member anymore.
Yeah.
Um, I think my view is shifted on that. Because for a couple different reasons, and again, it depends on what the service is, what you're signing up for. A lot of times, we don't
Hmm.
have the option for things like, internet is always going to be a monthly
Yeah.
expense. There is no like,
Yeah.
perpetual license for internet. But when I bring up software, I think about the software world, where it's like you used to be able to buy a perpetual license for Photoshop or
Hmm.
whatever else, and everything has moved toward this monthly subscription. And whatever your opinion may be on the merits or downsides of that, I don't know. When I actually did the math on my Adobe Master Suite thing, it was a wash. I had the math. I held on way too
Mhm.
long with Creative Suite too. I'd paid, the one of the highest amounts of money for that master
Yeah.
suite. At the time, it was like $1,700 retail or something for all of the software, which I used 50% of maybe.
Yep.
And I held on to it for like 10 years. I was still using like Creative Suite 2, Illustrator up until like
Oh man.
2 years ago. Uh, and when I did the math on like what Adobe's charging for subscription now,
Mhm.
it was like the same. If I
Yeah.
just paying that monthly rate when I broke that monthly cost down over time. And I missed out
Mhm.
on all the new Whizbang features and all this stuff and support and blah 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 blah.
Yep.
So in the software world, that's an interesting thing because like it's a continuous
Mhm.
improvement model. There's new features coming out and all that stuff.
Sure.
Yes, things can reach like product a level of maturity where it doesn't need to change a whole lot, and so maybe
Mhm.
perpetual is more compelling in that case. But when we talk about services like providing models
Mhm.
in the maker world, I think where we've seen it most commonly is kind of in the artistic realm.
Sure. Yeah. Mhm.
And I've seen people selling like Bob. I like to make stuff. Will sell his plans for
Mhm.
projects and stuff like that, and various platforms and whatnot. I think there's I think there's a lot of value in that as well, but that's a kind of a different beast than people that are 3D modelers like Fotis or
Yep.
Cinderwing 3D or Toymaker 3D or any of the big names out there.
Mhm.
Chelsea and Garrett over at Chaos Cortec. Some prolific designers out there that have leveraged a lot of these ecosystems to good effect.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm like, okay, I'd be curious to know, like, from coming from that end, what is the turnover like? Like, does it? I feel like I hear a lot of times like it can drag on people when you feel like you're being forced to have to like drop something new, and it's just the same thing
Sure.
with creators, right? You getting on
Mhm.
this flywheel, so it's
You're
not.
getting on a treadmill
Yeah,
that
you're getting on
you
that
can't.
treadmill.
Yeah, you can't control the speed of, and you feel the constant pressure for having to perform for these individuals that are giving you their hard-earned dollars.
And you can
Because
very
they're.
quickly see, I'm sure, when you're
Mhm.
not performing, you start to see your memberships fall off, right? So
Mhm.
it's a
Yeah.
an,
Yeah.
an pretty instant feedback kind of thing. I would think.
Mhm. What's interesting to me is that these membership support models, have been wildly successful, because I think that they play to the emotions of the individuals. Like for myself, the reason why I want to support someone is because I think what they're doing is cool, and I want to see them continue to do said work. There was a gentleman that I actually just donated a large sum, one-time donation to, because
Mm-hmm.
he was developing a controller for some high-end servos, for industrial settings, because I could see a personal use for that. He's working on an open source version of it, and that project, it was something that was interesting me. But because I know that this was a side job or a side hustle for him, it was a way in which I can ensure, maybe for my own selfish reasons, that it continues. So by supporting him moving forward every single month, I know that I'm contributing to the development of this thing. And it's a way that I can say, hey, I'm helping this person become better at whatever it is they're doing, or producing something that might eventually become a business, whatever it might be. So I think that that's one of the big things, is the driving force is that emotional piece to the
Yeah,
individuals that are supporting people.
yeah.
So.
Yeah. In response to some commentary from Grant, I have Affinity, and I use it for a number of things. I love it. There's a lot. We're lucky that we have a lot more options now than we used to. But I've used Photopea, which is a great free web-based option that I was learning with my kids and is really really powerful. Lots of cool stuff out there. Photo says you need to be consistent. We kind of
Mhm.
know that. CAD class, you're late. We were just shouting out you
Yeah, mark
guys
it down at the
and
party.
how amazing your book is and how much we appreciate you. K2 Kevin says he makes his bed but he doesn't put on his pants. Yeah, it doesn't. doesn't make sense. I'm not consistent. I'm not embarrassed by that. It's true. Um, to go back to the topic at hand, the thing I'm interested in is as a business. So you talk about supporting individuals,
Hmm.
and a lot of the content that's created on these platforms that you support are very directly related and great
Hmm.
marketing potential resource, great collaborative resources for you as a company, especially as Gloop is
Hmm. Oh,
designed
sure.
to glue, make a lot of these models. And so there's been some really great collaborations that you've done in the past where you've taken some of these epic models and used Gloop to put
Hmm.
them together. And I want to talk about something that I think isn't focused on as much as it could be in the marketing of these platforms as a business to business venture, right? So when we talk about
Hmm.
a business, we think about where is the money, and a lot of times the money is in working with other businesses, and sometimes
Yep.
even better money is there than working with consumers. So different set of
Hmm.
expectations, different
Sure.
value propositions and all of that stuff. But you as a business see a lot
Hmm.
of value in the partnerships and utilizing. You're not going to reinvent the wheel and have to make all your own models and stuff like that. Why would you do that? There's so many better talented artists out there that can provide
Hmm.
things, and
Yep.
you can help shine a light on them, and they can get some value out of having seen their stuff seen, and other people going to download. So it's a good win-win in
Hmm.
my mind. On the business front, I'm
Hmm.
curious, like when you're coding your books, when you pay a monthly subscription for these types of things,
Yeah.
historically, that I don't know that that's been as precedented as a legitimate business expense, even though it is.
Hmm.
Yeah, how do you code something like that? Because it's like very clearly, if I go buy staples for the office, like that is a business
Hmm.
expense.
Hmm.
You monthly paying for something like these
We
things isn't quite the same. I don't know what do the bean
so
counters think about this?
it's interesting, right? I
Yeah.
mean, because we actually had that question come up not too long ago because I was actually going through getting taxes ready. Um and we code them as memberships because that's what they are. They're honest to God memberships to a club. Now this specific piece is it depends on how we leverage it, but in many cases we count them as marketing memberships
Right.
because we are supporting and offering dollars, marketing dollars, essentially to these individuals. That's basically how we code them internally.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure there's different ways that you can code them. Like this one-time donation that I would speaking of, that was just a donation. Granted, it's not like a tax deductible donation,
Right.
but in this case, it was an R&D. The reason why is because we actually have intentions of using these open source pieces internally for a
Yeah.
project that we're working on.
Yeah.
And so, as long as we can justify it and, kind of back it up as to what it is,
Sure.
then you're good. But you brought up a really interesting point on like the business side of things. Like, so for Gloop, you're absolutely right. Like some of our best actual attraction for whatever it is that we've been doing with our products or just in general marketing has been working with other content creators and trying to develop models or work on a project or whatever that they are releasing either exclusively
Yeah.
or to their patreons, and then they say, hey, yeah, this was sponsored by Gloop or whatever. And there's ways in which we support the individual creating those projects, and then also there's kickback if those convert into sales through discount codes or whatever, that we can then continue supporting that. So these people that are having these patreons or these club memberships, I think they need to start looking at how do they turn this into a business and start working on those deals with other companies.
Absolutely. Massive
So
opportunity there, I
mhm.
think. And so, if you're thinking about doing this, one of the fallacies that a lot of makers fall into, we've talked about this in the past, is that we don't like to sell.
Mhm.
I'm saying the global we. I love to sell personally. I'll sell ketchup popsicles to the woman in white gloves. But um, it's if you want to be successful, if you want to grow, you need to advocate, especially when you're getting started, right? You have to make a name for yourself. thinking about how you're going to maximize that visibility,
Hmm.
and collaborations. That's why they're so popular. You know, like I know it's a running joke in the world of content creation that you can't eat exposure, but there is value in exposure, and there needs to be. You can't do all of one thing or another. Like I would never want to do a
Hmm.
deal that was just like solely based on exposure. I mean,
Yeah.
people do that as they're getting the start. You know, like if you have an opportunity to work with a top tier YouTuber that's willing to just like feature your brand and not charge you for that stuff like that, yeah,
Oh.
absolutely take 100% exposure for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But most of the times the people that are offering that like don't really have as much exposure as they would like to make you think.
Hmm.
And so, you know, maybe supplement that with a little bit of a cash deal, or maybe
Hmm.
there's royalty. I mean, there's probably all kinds of little mechanisms that we haven't even thought of yet in order of
Hmm.
monetizing this. But the B2B thing is interesting to me because, like I said, there's a lot of businesses out there that have marketing dollars, that have budgets allocated for this thing,
Hmm.
and are looking for interesting things. Trade shows might be a fantastic thing if you can think about like, oh, what if I can design a model that, you know, utilizes your brand that you can use as a display trade
Hmm.
show. Like if you spend a little time to research awareness of like where budgets are allocated in large businesses, and you know, companies
Yep.
that are already looking to spend this money and find ways to do that. I think there's some really creative solutions that are going to be more potentially lucrative than trying to just get the consumer market to sign up for your cold
Hmm.
3D or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Um, that said, I think it's like anything. There's multiple tools in the toolbox, and if your product is a digital asset, you're probably want to get it everywhere that you can possibly get visibility, and as many people as like. I can't see a reason. And Fotis, if you're still with me, I would love your opinion on this. We really missed the ball, and we should have had Fotis on here. I've been too sloppy in getting the guest stuff, but we will do that at another point. Um, what are the merits, if there are any, in an exclusivity deal of only having certain content on certain platforms or only focusing
Hmm.
on a certain platform? I
Yeah.
mean, there's an administrative overhead, I have to imagine, of like having to post all of these things and do updates on, you know, every
Yeah.
day more of these sites coming about. And obviously the sites want to try to have unique content because in this day and age, content is king, right? And so
Yep.
we see Netflix and Apple TV start to produce content because they want to have exclusive content, and Thangs and Printables Clubs and all these other things are no exception to that. I think there's value in exclusivity, especially at the top tiers.
Hmm.
Um, but I want to hear on the creator side, you know, when you're first getting started, are you just taking that shotgun approach? Are you just blasting it all out there, trying to capture every dollar you can? And is that maybe a fallacy in the sense that you're creating a lot more work for yourself, even though you think that you're getting it out there? I don't know. What are your thoughts, Andrew?
Well, I mean, as a business, I hate exclusivity agreements unless there's some very specific benefits,
Yeah.
and reasons as to why you're going to engage in exclusivity.
Mm-hmm.
So as an artist or as someone who is participating in these things, I mean, be very careful and weary of those. Um, sometimes I don't know if any of these platforms offer any exclusivity.
Yeah.
But I could see where, I know, for instance, like Twitch, for some of the high end content creators, there are exclusivity agreements that they can
Yeah.
only use Twitch for streaming.
Sure.
But generally speaking, they always come with a guaranteed sort of payout and,
Right.
some sort of, benefit for that.
Yeah.
Now, also, when it comes to, like the marketing piece, I mean, I think, yeah, if you have a membership sort of business model, you're an artist that is surviving off of these memberships, it behooves you to have the most places so that you can have all of these other memberships,
Right.
because it's just it's a numbers game. The more people that, or maybe some people are only on Patreon, maybe some
Yeah.
people are only on YouTube memberships or
Yeah.
printables or cults or
Yeah.
whatever it might be.
Yeah.
um
On the
you know
subscriber side, I mean, it makes perfect sense because like communities are just like, there are people that just have their favorite things.
Mhm.
Some people are on
Yep.
Twitter, some people are on Instagram, some people are on Twitter,
Yep.
and you know, if you can create content that exists on all those places, like why wouldn't you, right? Because that's just
Mhm.
another, tranche of community to potentially
Yeah.
leverage with your stuff.
Now,
Fotis is saying there aren't any exclusivity benefits for him. Platforms won't offer something about exclusivity. Is that, in your opinion, Fotis, is that because that doesn't really benefit them, or it just hasn't really come about yet? Or like Andrew says, is like maybe it's only offered to like very select top tier, on a private
yeah.
basis. There's not public,
Hmm.
because I have to imagine that there are some backroom
Hmm.
deals happening with some places where there's
Oh,
some exclusive
yeah.
content to, it seems like it would be in the interest of the content provider to potentially want to
Hmm.
market that and
Yeah.
give
I mean,
creators something to aspire to, maybe like that kind of
I could see as
position.
specifically in the 3D printing marketplaces and the membership areas, I could see, we're in a time of innovation, and there are starting to be a lot of, competitors. For the longest time, I only knew of, Colts and MyMiniFactory.
Mhm.
But before that, it was like the online repository like Thingiverse was the thing that started it all. We all kind of
Remember
see what
Thingiverse?
happened. We all kind of see what happened with Thingiverse, with the
uh,
failed innovation. So I think now we see these other players are coming to market, and they're starting to specialize. Like from my understanding, Colts and My Mini Factory are really now marketplaces for 3D models. I don't know if they might have some membership pieces to it,
mhm.
but it's really about having a designer that is building a model and then selling that model X number of times, like a piece of software or whatever. You go in, you can buy it, and then you download it, and then you can print it as many times as you want.
Right.
Typically, personally, I mean, we don't have to get into the whole licensing piece, because that's a whole other thing.
Sure
But I could
is.
see,
Sure is.
I could see as because now we have printables. I think Bamboo Lab also announced some sort of marketplace or some sort of like community, that they're
I'd be
building.
I'd be surprised if they weren't. I'm not up to speed on it, but I'd be surprised if they
Yeah.
didn't, given their history.
And so I could see where these places it might make some sense to get some of the most prominent creators or whatever and lock them in, so to speak,
Mhm.
so that they can differentiate their platform versus another.
And I'm
Um,
telling you, I think that's
it's
gonna happen.
probably in the pipeline. Yeah.
It's not without precedent. Like I said, if you look at the traditional content streams, like I said, the Netflix, the world, like the large delivery networks in the world
Hmm.
of video, they
Yeah.
absolutely do that, and they recognize the value in being the ones that have something, a reason for people to be on that platform.
Hmm.
That said, I don't know if that breaks down when the expectations are just different, like
Yeah.
but I don't know, because it's very a la carte right now, right? Like you're paying for the specific
Hmm.
content. Like if you were to go to Netflix and only buy access to House of Cards or whatever
Hmm.
shows you wanted, I don't know what that would do.
Yeah.
I still think there's value in exclusivity, but at a specific quality
Hmm.
tier.
Yeah.
And I'll bet you we see more of that. I really
Well,
do.
what's also interesting with some of the things that I kind of love, but I also hate, and I think I've heard from creators as well that there are some interesting issues with the membership styles. If for instance I want to go and support a 3D modeler who has a Patreon,
Yeah.
I can subscribe for a month, and let's say they have a back catalog of all of their models. And some of them have this Google Drive link that you'll get sent as a part of an automated thing when you join in that gives you access to all of that. And I can basically support for whatever month at the minimum tier to get that, download all their models, and then next month I'm done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm sure that happens, and I know that that's not really benefiting the artists. Maybe that's just kind of an acceptable, state of business where you just have to accept that there are going to be some people that do that.
Yeah.
Um, but there's this weird balancing act that I think happens between a traditional marketplace and subscription membership. Because some of these models, like, I mean, I could see where I would be willing to pay a couple bucks or $10 or 15, whatever it might be, for a specific model.
Yeah.
But I'm not really interested in all of the other models that this particular creator does.
Right.
Now, I mean, I don't know. It's an interesting piece, because I think as we see, like with printables, for instance, they don't have that sort of functionality where, when they were talking about potentially monetizing it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
was having the ability to allow people to sell their models
Yep.
on printables. But now it came out as, oh well, no, it's going to be a club, because that way it's kind of different in a sense that you're not having a paid model show up in a search
Mm-hmm.
when you're only looking for free models, or a segmentation, things like behind a paywall, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah, no, certainly. And like I said, there's a million different ways to go about it, and each little area kind of has its own uh you know
Hmm.
ways that they want to go about it. Um I remember having some conversations a while back with Miklas at Prusa
Hmm.
about printables. He was tasked with heading up the development of the printables stuff. And when we got into the weeds about the mechanics of the administrative side of like how the payouts had to work, what the tax implications from it, there's
Hmm.
all these little things that we as the public do not think about or see, and it just seems ridiculous that it has to be done a certain way. But some of the rationale behind that has to do with the financials sometimes, and
Hmm.
and things that are just not inherently obvious to us
Sure.
as consumers. But you know, there's there's so much
Hmm.
meat on this bone, and I wanted to talk. One of the things, I don't know, have you seen the new Thangs membership stuff that they put up? And I've only looked into it.
I've only looked at it a little bit. I'm not super familiar.
So they're big on creating some gamification, and they've got a leaderboard that's up there, and that I love. I can appreciate the brilliance of that in the sense that it gives the creators something to get excited and to talk about and to encourage. Hey, I'm working my way up the leaderboard, and then they post on social media about it, and it just shines a
Hmm.
big old light on it. Gamification is always a like
Oh
it just
yeah.
vibes so well with human nature, right? I mean, there's a reason that it is what it is. And printables did an interesting thing with the creation of the Prusa meters, right, where you creating
Yep.
a currency of your own, and that's got some motivating things that you can turn it into real world
Hmm.
product and stuff like that, which is fantastic. I think people love that kind of stuff. Um, so I think we're going to just see a lot of development and a lot of competition in this space because there's a lot of companies out there that see value in this kind of content for different reasons. We brought up
Hmm.
Thangs. Thangs is they're based on like search, but they're funded by search companies. I think
Hmm.
Google is one of their funders, or they're tied
Yeah. They have some
historically to it.
interesting intellectual property,
Yeah, and
in their systems.
so their reasoning for it may be a little bit different than like why printables wants to build the community
Hmm.
and how it's monetized and profitable for the company and stuff, and those little things matter too, because I think that
Hmm.
that tells part of the story in terms of like what who you're hitching your cart to, right?
Yep.
Most creators they're just trying to get paid for their stuff, and so you're probably going to make some concession in terms of I don't like the fact that they're basically data mining my stuff to monetize it for
Hmm.
search and stuff like that. But if it makes me a couple bucks, like that seems fair, right? The whole
Hmm.
argument that you're probably the product if you don't see exactly where the dollars are.
Yep. Yeah.
But I don't know. I think we're going to continue to see like you said, Bamboo is
Hmm.
motivated to create a community as well, because when you can create an ecosystem that ties the entire process together, from getting a model, getting it to the printer, selling the
Hmm.
filament, all
Yeah.
of that, that's compelling.
This is a vertical integration,
Exactly.
at its core. And yeah, I mean, I think you also brought up a really interesting point here, is how do these sites pay for themselves? Storage is not free. Access
Yeah.
to internet's not free. All of the maintenance required, the development staff, these things, they cost money. And so like look at like a Thingiverse where it was predominantly free. It was supported by ads or whatever, where they were selling your data. I think it's interesting for if you were to compare like the Colts and MyMiniFactory and printables, like these companies, they all do it a little differently.
Right.
And kind of support the development and iterations of their sites, a little bit different. But
Hmm.
again, it's really interesting to see a marketplace versus a subscription model versus like a completely free tier, for designers, because I know that there are some designers that we actually work with. Shout out to Steve, Red Dad Steve. Like
Oh
he's a
yeah.
amazing designer, and most of the stuff that he does, he posts it all for free,
Yeah. Yeah.
because he doesn't really want to make money off of that. It's a passion thing for him.
Well,
um
and Fotis has feels on this too, because when you're dealing in the world of fan art and it's
mhm,
question, it's like, well,
sure.
and
Hmm.
I think it's easier to, and this is no shot at Red Dad Steve, amazingly talented
Oh
dude
yeah.
and all this stuff,
Hmm.
but it'd be particularly eyebrow raising to some people if you were monetizing basically like trademark design and all that
Hmm.
stuff, and which isn't to say that I think that there's value in what he has created and done, but it's not, you're in a weird gray area when it's not your IP
Yeah.
exactly, and all that stuff. And he has unique stuff too. So don't,
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm. Yeah.
that's no shot at any individual, but
Hmm.
I think the legal, Brandon talked about, platforms should also support IP protection and stuff like that. There is a
Hmm.
slew of like legal concerns and
Oh
IP
yeah.
protection and stuff like that that still has yet to be probably fully fleshed out, like what the right moderation for those types of things are and all of that. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I think it's just interesting to, kind of talk about these things, because as an artist or a creator that, might be wanting to get into the space, there are a ton of options out there. You can choose from the a la carte model, where you have all of your designs that you post, publicly, on a, like an online store, like a Colts or My Mini Factory. And you could also have, that same thing behind a membership area, where it's like, well, hey, listen, if you don't want to buy all of those a la carte, you come over to the members area and you'll
Hmm.
get access to them, and
Yeah.
maybe you'll get some other exclusive benefits. I know that a lot of these, like Patreon, comes with a Discord. You could join without the Patreon thing, but being a part of the Patreon gets you maybe a badge in the Discord server,
Hmm.
gets you into other areas. There's a lot of interesting ways that creators can provide value.
Yeah.
Um,
I've seen some interesting combos too of people, like it gets you a little bit of access, right? Where it's like,
mhm,
oh, you have access to the private chat. Like once a month we get together if you want to talk and ask me questions, only members
mhm,
only conversation.
yep,
I think that's great. Honestly, I think that's a great
mhm,
way to provide some value and to those that appreciate that kind of stuff. I know of a couple people that just support various channels solely for that part of it, right? They don't care about the models, but they want to, have
mhm,
conversations, or they're an aspiring designer themselves, and like this is kind of a form of mentorship. So
yep,
there's probably more value out there than is just immediately available to people that are just like, oh no, you're just going on there to buy a 3D model,
mhm,
because the brand is you, right? And
mhm,
so there's more than one way just that, to get your stuff out there. We're closing in on our solid 60, but I wanted to ask you really quick, because like I said, I've been dabbling in this and we've talked about this offline.
mhm,
As a product designer, I don't,
mhm,
it's not unprecedented. I do see people selling practical designs on
yeah,
club type things, right?
mhm,
I think, and maybe you guys disagree with me, but like predominantly when I look at the things that are being featured on these platforms, they're more of the artistic, nature
mhm,
there, that you don't see as many like practical prints. And so I was toying with the idea of like, well, we've got this open source platform in, Reprack, which is just a silly little shelving system that I had like whipped up that kind of took off on printables, and I'm It's super useful. I'm constantly building rep rack for various stuff. Like I can't wait to show off my next setup in the print farm. Um, but I mentioned on the last thing, like we've had
Mhm.
have lean, months, and I'm looking for ways to monetize ideas. And so I'm like, well, what if I create some exclusive add-ons for shelving and some other
Yeah.
designs that I have out there that people, that might want to subscribe at a very nominal fee for add-ons.
Mhm.
I think there's merit in that, and it's proven. I have 9 members. You
Mhm.
of which are one of them. Thank you. This is a new thing for me. But these are things that I would design anyway, and I like, and I do still want to commit to having stuff that's public. Like I think the 1-2 punch of having publicly available stuff that you're giving back to the community, and then
Mhm.
asking for a little bit of support for some stuff for people that need it. Like I think there's merit to it, but I don't know how
Mhm.
precedented or planned out that is, and I don't know.
Well,
What are your
yeah.
thoughts on that?
I mean, you and I on some offline conversations had some interesting thoughts and ideas around leveraging a system like a membership, portal for product development, and offering exclusive models or the ability access to either make products or potentially get a the ability to build something that you're going to build yourself, but you also have the the hardware kits. So this weird hybrid model, if you will. I know that there are some memberships out there and Patreon, like if you have a design and people want to sell the 3D printed model, you have to subscribe to a certain tier, and that gets you a license.
Yeah,
But taking this to a product where maybe it's a bigger thing than instead of it just being a 3D printed thing, it's really interesting. It's a kind of distributed manufacturing model, but
yeah.
also at the same time, you can have pieces and that you are the only capable producer of a specific part. So if someone is interested in doing this, they
Mm-hmm.
still have to come to you to buy the other pieces to still build this.
Right.
So it's like a quasi open source, but still at the same time subscription model that people are supporting. It's a really unique idea.
I've been wanting to crack this distributed manufacturing nut for a long
Hmm.
time. I've been talking about it ever since we did the face shields, thing, and I really think there's something there. I think that the licensing, and again, I have no
Hmm.
problem. I've even toyed with the idea of just like completely opening up, Repbox and some other stuff too. And who knows, maybe that'll happen. I think there were concerns in the past, as I evolve and look at other ways and realize that certain things are viable and certain things aren't, in the economy that I manufacture in.
Hmm.
I think there's different solutions, and I frankly think that on a private use basis, anybody that wants to make their own and stuff anyway, if you make it accessible and the fee reasonable, right?
Hmm.
I think a part of our challenge is like we just priced out of what people are willing to pay for what the thing is. Like I wouldn't pay, like the amount sometimes, like for some of the stuff that we do when
Sure.
I'm just wearing my maker hat. Now, what I do see, and what is I think a little bit different for me, is that coming from the product side, I know how many hours have gone into like developing something like this, and so I feel a little bit differently about asking like a little bit of a fee to
Hmm.
support coming back than maybe other people do, where like a Red Dad Steve who just wants to do the more altruistic thing, and I think
Hmm.
there's no right or wrong, and I think the combination of the two is great. I think that being a good member of the community will
Hmm.
will win you a lot of good faith and merit
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff too. And I think that there's ways that we're going to see, and I want to see more development in the legal front of like creating hybrid licensing models and stuff like that, where free for personal use. I mean, this exists to some extent already, but then if you want a
Hmm.
commercial license to actually produce, that puts you in a whole different world, right?
Hmm.
You pay for the right to do that, and maybe that's in lieu of like paying a royalty or something that traditionally you might do in a license to manufacture agreement.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see, like, will these platforms support that? Like, I don't feel like it's talked about as much. I mean, there are models on printables that are absolutely practical, utilitarian
Mhm.
things of incredibly high value that would, um,
Mhm.
benefit from this potentially.
Sure.
There's data
Yeah.
mining opportunity. Like I said, if you want to throw a bunch of things out there and make it free and see what sticks, and then, oh wow, I've got a lot of traction around this, but retain the license to basically say, like, you know what, that did really well. Why don't I sell these parts and offer that up on this marketing platform as a means of saying, hey, if you don't want to make
Mhm.
this yourself, you can just buy it right here.
Mhm.
That's a win-win, I think. It can be.
Yep. Yeah.
So there you go. I don't know. Like, I think the future is bright in terms of like ways to make money in this maker economy,
Oh, absolutely.
in ways that we probably haven't even thought of yet.
Mhm.
So I think the takeaway that I would hope for anybody that's listening back on this, try to think outside of the box. Like, think about what's a unique offering. Like, how are you competing? Obviously, if you're just out there creating more of the same, you're gonna dilute the field. And so I think no
Mhm.
matter what you're doing, having that unique value proposition is important. So make sure you're focusing on that. What is it that you do that only you can do?
Mhm.
Or just realize that if you don't, like, it's not to say that you can't be part of the herd, but you're going to be fighting tooth and nail, and maybe then it's only just a side hustle. I don't know.
Yeah.
So you have to decide what you want and what you're going for. Lots of variables as always.
Mhm. No one solution
I
for
feel
everything.
like I feel like we just scratched the surface. We didn't even like really get into the mechanics of like the differences between the platforms and all of this stuff. And frankly,
Mhm.
like, I'm a novice in a lot of it. I find it interesting. I welcome the conversation. So
Yeah.
let us know what you think. Our tags on all the social media are down here. Tweet at us if you like the content, if you like what we're bringing to you guys, if you like the conversation. We thank you for people that support what we do here. We do have the ability to, super chat and all that stuff, and we're thankful for people that support what we do. This is a
Mhm.
passion project for us. We do not have a Patreon. We don't, and I like to say we would do this anyway, but
Mhm.
there is time and cost associated with it. So we are thankful for people that support that as well.
Mhm.
I think that's it for today.
Yeah.
Parting words from wise parting words from Andrew Mayhall are happening right now. Go.
Oh. Oh man, you put me on the spot as always, right?
I love putting you on the spot. You know that's what I do.
No, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway is evaluate your options as an artist or as a maker. If you are interested in these platforms, really take a deep dive, and I think learn the benefits of them all. And figure out what's kind of best for you and the things that you're doing. Maybe if you're a very social extroverted person who likes posting updates and really leverages those social media things, maybe a membership model is a really good option because you can have some exclusive content.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe if you're just, hey, I've designed this cool thing, other people might, find it interesting. Maybe you throw it up on an online marketplace. Who knows? you know?
I completely agree with all of that stuff, and I would just add on to, like, take a page out of Fotis's book, be a generous
Hmm.
contributor to community,
Yeah.
and recognize the value in that, and that it's not always about just making money right away, but giving back. I always advocate shine a light on other people. So if you're going to ask for support, make sure you're supporting others as best as you can. I know that it's rough for everybody out there right now, and but I would argue it's not zero sum. I think we're always worried that if, like, I'm just competing with other people, that's the wrong attitude in this type of space. I think if you're getting
Hmm.
out there and you feel like, well, if I'm going to have a printables club, like, I'm going to be taken away from Fotis or any of the other amazing creators out there. No, I don't think it works that way. I think there's ways that you can work together. I think you can collaborate.
Hmm.
I think we can help each other. Rising
Yeah.
tide lifts all benches, as I like to say.
Also think about brand opportunities, ways to work with a business, about your skills, whatever. You have a membership platform, you guys have an audience, a devoted audience, and there's value there. Maybe it's working with a brand who's, I mean, I'll use Gloop as an example, who has a product that benefits people in the 3D printing space. If there are ways in which, you can leverage it in a design that, you know, could increase sales of a specific product, or increase the visibility, there's value there.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I've paid for it in the past. I know that there are future projects that we are working on, so I'm not the only company.
Oh God, no! We've seen
Yeah.
all the major 3D printing, Protopasta. Like a lot of,
Mhm.
there's just, these are just great little marketing pieces that companies are hungry for. So
Mhm.
do a little outreach, get outside the box. Don't just wait for people to come to you. See what opportunities are out there,
Mhm.
and leverage your skills in a different way. Capture different parts of the market.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Happy Friday to you. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you next Friday for the next edition of Maker That Money, the podcast where we talk about turning your hobby into your jobby. Until then, this is
See ya.
Pooch from Repkord and Andrew from 3D Gloops signing off. Bye-bye.